Welcome to the Christian Village Church, and got off to a good start with Christy, and everything is everything under control there, Al? Does it seem to be going all right? Or yeah, I think everything is a little bit confusion. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about Jesus' feelings about reincarnation, and I think it should be interesting. You know, we talked this morning when we were sharing in Buddha, as Buddha explained to us the meaning, the ancient meaning of the place called hell. And what he said simply, that hell is a state of mind. It's the state of our concentration on our own conceived agony. That's what he talked about. But our Western heritage really doesn't believe in reincarnation. And basically you'll hear many people say, hey, you've only got one life, you only go around once, so you know, do the best you can. And that's pretty much the basis of our Western culture and our Western spiritual culture. But in the most primitive forms of religion, there's always been a belief that this life is one part of the total, that it is not the total. In other words, it's a chapter, but it's not the book. Okay? The soul, according to the ancients, survives death. And Christianity believes this. You know, that's not a question. The question that I think we run into, the differences, is where we survive the death of the body. Where does the soul go? What happens? Interestingly, in Scandinavian mythology of the North Country, the soul goes to a place called Valhalla. You probably have heard that. If any of you listen to Wagner's works, you know, Valhalla. That's the place where the soul goes, and that's the beliefs of the ancient Scandinavians. But we say that you know, this place goes, it's in the sky somewhere, heaven or hell or literal places, but yet we do admit that this literal place has to deal with a non-literal being. See, there's a real fire in the pit somewhere to deal with what is actually not a real human being, but a spiritual entity, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The Polynesians believe the soul goes to the west. See? And basically we say that life on this planet is just a stepping stone to someplace else. So everybody kind of believes that something happens, see? But the problem with Christianity is you're not allowed to express any opinions or ideas about what may happen. You're not allowed to do that. You're simply told that you're to listen and keep quiet and then wait and see what happens. But you're not allowed to utter any kind of question or not allowed to make any kind of statement about what happens to the body after death. Because if you say something that may not be the particular position of the church you're going to, then you may wind up, you'll be damned. You know, you can suffer eternal damnation. But let us think and refute the main line if we can, or let us agree with the main line if that's the case. But let us respond, let us reason, and let us just say, no, it's not a question of us being damned. What we want to damn is our ignorance and our fears. Let's get rid of that so that we can be free. As we were talking about this morning, the Buddha, let us be free to understand things. Let us be free to discuss things. And nobody here has to believe anything. Nobody out on the television has to believe anything. We're simply going to show you some things, and we're going to talk and try to ask a few questions. And we're going to close the Bible for a while. And try to ask a few questions that maybe will titillate our fancy a little bit and make us think. In other words, let's ask this one. If this life is a stopping off place for a more grand life somewhere, someplace else, why does instinct give this tremendous desire for us to survive here? I mean, why isn't there an instinctive feeling for us to die and go someplace else? Why do we hang on to every bit of life possible, and why then do we feel that, yes, this is where we want to stay? I am very content to stay here. If I get a guarantee I can stay on the planet Earth forever, that's great. I thoroughly enjoy it. I think it's a great place. It's screwed up, but we can straighten it out, sweep out the cobwebs, and, you know, fix it up a little bit. It's a magnificent Earth. That's what my instinctive feeling is, that I would like to stay forever right here. I am not in any way enamored with a desire to fly off to some planet somewhere. Because in the first place, I don't think there is any planet to fly off to. Not in our solar system, anyhow. So then, if we start thinking on that basis, instinct, which does not fool you, is telling us This is it. And that our survival is to be here. That's the way instinct deals with me. I've never had an instinctive feeling to go off to some planet somewhere, and God knows where in the sky. The fundamentalist of religion people that we deal with, who is so excited about the glories of heaven, and you see them on television. They have guitars and they have tambourines, and they say, "I'm a-going to streets of gold. I'm gonna see the Lord tonight. I can't wait to leave this old rotten world. I'm gonna see God tonight." And the doctor tells them, "I think you got something bad." Yeah, you want to applaud? That was bad. But the doctor tells the same guy, "I think you got something serious." What? And this guy will spend every dime to try to get cured so he doesn't have to go off tonight to see the... He wants to stay right here. Banjoitis. There is an absolute truth to that people who claim they can't wait to leave this old world and go to a greater place will do anything humanly possible to survive and stay right here. So it's a contradiction. I was telling the people this morning that as I visited the folks in the hospital, every time that I see something, my mind starts working in a spiritual, mystical way. And I looked at the doctors, and I looked at the sick people, and I looked at the nurses. And Spirit told me as I was coming out to the parking lot that this earth is an insane asylum. It's a hospital. And we're all patients. Every single person is a patient in an insane asylum. But the problem is, instead of listening to the doctors and the nurses who are in here, we're listening to the patients. And they're telling us what to do and what's going to happen. And they come down from Ward 9 and say, demons are going to get you. Devils are going to get you. God is planning a nuclear war. People are going to get out of their graves. And they come on television. All the patients come on television. And they're telling us this stuff. And we're sending the money because we want to be with them. We want to be just like the people on Ward 9. But we don't listen to the doctors. We don't listen to the nurses inside. And so what have we got? We've lived our life getting advice from the patients on Ward 9. And then we wonder why it's screwed up. Say, we've never listened to the doctor in here. We've never followed the healing message in here. We listen to those who are 10 times sicker than we are. And then they come on all the patients come on television with their banjos and with their pianos, and they tell us all of this bizarre stuff. And then they tell you, to show you how whacked out they are on Ward 9, they say, if you will get out your Visa card and send them $1,000, I will send you a hanky that I blow on. Whew! And yes, we send them the $1,000. So we're in trouble, big trouble, because the patients are calling the shots. Okay? But those people then who get excited and tell you that this old earth is no good and they can't wait to get to the streets of gold and they can't wait to get up to the pearly gates, as I said, will do anything possible to protect themselves so that they stay right here. But then let me ask you a question. That's another question. What about God is just? In other words, God is fair. I mean, we're all supposed to arrive at the point of being a born-again Christian and receive Jesus Christ, yet there are many who are born Muslims. There are many who are born Shintos. There are many who are born Buddhists. There are many who are born Hindus. You know, what chance do they have, as far as we're concerned, to be like us and to reach this point of salvation? Very little. Very little chance. And there's many people have a head start, don't they? I mean, depending on their family circumstances, you may be born into a very rich household somewhere in Hyannis, Massachusetts. You've got a pretty good shot at doing what you want to do. Or then, on the other hand, you may be born in some depressed area in the middle of the woods somewhere, or out in the plains of Africa to some tribe. You don't have very much chance then at living, do you? Where's the fairness in that? Where's the justice in that? I mean, one kid is born, he's guaranteed he's going to grow up, be a lawyer, whatever. Anything that he or she wants, she's got, or he's got. But what about the little child that's born to this Bedouin tribesman in the middle of the Kalahari Desert? What chance? Maybe a chance to live till 4 years old, 5 years old, it's lucky. Not a whole lot of justice in there, not a whole lot of fairness in there. Some people are born, like most of you say, born with healthy minds, most of you healthy bodies. Many are born, there are some children born without a brain. There are some people who were born with limbs missing. There were people who were born with their heads attached to another person's head. There were people who were born with all kinds of bizarre disfigurements. Where's the justice? Is this fair? I mean, is God merciful and he's just? Is this fair? What the heck's going on here? I mean, does anybody ever get on a religious Christian program and talk about people that are born with two heads? Or people that are born without limbs? Or people that are born with only a part of a brain? What's this all about? See? And how can we be credited at some particular time? Because we start, we live, we survive the body. You know, what I'm trying to say to you is this is the way we're told that we get born a particular time. The body dies, but we survive it. But we don't pre-exist it. What happened? You know, where did we come from before the body? They know what happens to us after the body, but where do we come from before the body? According to the Bible, it says, God foreknew you. You existed before you got in this body. Where were you? What were you doing? Where did you exist? Nobody ever wants to address that. And the simple reason is Christianity in the West simply says they don't believe in reincarnation, so they're not allowed to talk about these things. What does it mean, God foreknew you? Before you were in the womb, I knew you. And in Romans, we looked at this morning, it said, God foreknew you and predestinated you. So you were known to God before you occupied the body you have now. How is this? We have a beginning, according to Christianity, we have no beginning other than when we're born, but we have no end. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We then search for a point of perfection, which is a meditative state. It says in Matthew 5:48, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. How many? If I was to talk to you before you knew about meditation, it says you're supposed to be perfect, you say, well, that leaves me out. How many people come into church and they hear the minister or whatever reading out of the Bible and saying, so be there perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And you walk out the door. I'm out of this. They have no idea that perfection is the meditative state above thought. They have no idea that that's what it's talking about. So they think they're going to have to live in some perfected realm, and they can't do it. So they become very disgruntled. It's out of my reach, when yet it's so easy to become perfect, simply to hit the floor and raise your consciousness above the thoughts of the mind, and you enter into perfection. And that's all it means. But can you reach perfection in the short span of time of birth to death? Or maybe does it have an ultimate goal? Maybe there is a goal that will take successive experiences to reach. Could that possibly be? Could that possibly be? Maybe it's just too much for a person to come into life and to find this perfection, to find this place in one lifetime. Maybe it takes several attempts at it in order to find it. Maybe that's a possibility. So reincarnation could certainly be a logical way for a person to eventually reach these goals, because simply there is a creative essence in nature that says as many times as you need to experience life to reach this goal, you have that opportunity. That's possible. If there's no reincarnation, okay, let's say then there is no such thing as reincarnation. Then explain this. This is a fact. You can read this. This doesn't require you to be religious. Explain this. Wolfgang Mozart played a concert on a harpsichord at 5 years old and toured Europe playing concerts at age 6. How? How? Where did he understand it? Did he go to college? Did he take a music? Did he go where did he learn at 5 years old to play a harpsichord? How could he be giving concerts all over Europe at age 6? Here, listen to this guy. Sir William Hamilton learned Hebrew at age 3, and at age 13 could speak 13 languages fluently. How? How's that possible? Where did he learn? Where did he learn? And his name wasn't Bernie Rosenblum. His name was William Hamilton. Where does he learn to speak Hebrew at the age of 3? I couldn't speak English at the age of 3. But where does this guy learn to speak Hebrew at the age of 3? Where does Mozart learn to play a harpsichord at the age of 6? How is that possible? But Could they have been here before, and could they have brought with them a development that was gained in previous lives? These are things that happen all the time. And the unfortunate part is you're not allowed to discuss them. You're not allowed to think of them. How can these things happen? Oh, we don't know with it, so don't get involved in that stuff. It's everything. Don't get involved in it, and it's everything. Everything beautiful that you should be getting involved in. Who was a reincarnation believer? One great spokesman of the world who was a tremendous believer in reincarnation was a man named Plato. This was the wisdom of Plato, and you might want to write it down because it's good wisdom for you to understand. Now, this guy is not a kook, okay? He doesn't work in a New Age bookstore or anything like that. He knows, and I don't say people that work in New Age bookstores are kooks, but that's the way the system defines people that are into the things we're into. You know, this is Plato, very distinguished, historical Plato. Listen to what he says. Knowledge easily acquired is that which the enduring self had in an earlier life, so it flows back easily. Quote, unquote, Plato. Listen to it again. Knowledge, things that you have, that you understand, that flow very easily acquired, is that which the enduring self had in an earlier life, so it flows back easily. Plato. A good guy to quote. Would you say, Albert? I mean, he has some credentials, I would think. You know, he's not the village idiot by any way, shape, or form. Good quote. So he is saying that these things that come very easily to you is knowledge that you have had in a previous lifetime, so that as you start to mature in this lifetime and your brain develops to the point where you can then reassert it, here it comes flooding into you. This is extremely easy for me to do. So somewhere, obviously, in a previous existence, I was dealing with this. Because it just takes me no time to be able to do it. Okay? That is no big deal, but just simply try to back up what he's talking about. And I'm sure there are things in your lifetime or things that you do. And if not, then you should meditate into those things and try to discern just what it is. Because there is something that comes from a previous lifetime that would be very easy for you and will make clear to you that what you were doing before. In Jesus' time, in the lifetime of Jesus Christ, I want you to understand something. The theory of reincarnation was a commonly held belief. It was a very common belief. And Jesus Christ slammed down hard against mainline religious belief. He came down against everything religious. He came down against everything doctrinal. He came down against everything of the church. He came down against the Bible. He came down against the law, but he never came down against the theory of reincarnation. Yet it was a very predominant belief in that time when he lived. Now let's take a look at some scriptures, and let's see what we look at, okay? Now, the point is, if you're coming here looking for proof, okay, then you're not being fair. On the other hand, if you want to be, as a judge and a jury, you're looking for evidence upon which to make a decision, then you be the jury. I'll give you the evidence. You make the decision based on what you hear. You can vote. It's up to you. Okay? Let's take a look. Page 10, New Testament, Matthew. Matthew chapter 11. Page 10, New Testament, Matthew. Matthew chapter 11. Okay? Go to verse 14. Go to verse 13. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. This is John the Baptist. Now this is the next one that I want you to see. If you will receive it. In other words, if you are not going to work at this with a prejudiced mind because people have told you not to believe it, if you will receive it, this is Elias, which means Elijah, which was for to come. In other words, there was a prophecy that Elijah would be reincarnated and make a second appearance, and Jesus Christ says that man standing over there is the Elijah who was to come. Elijah has reincarnated into the body of that man that you call John the Baptist. And Jesus Christ says, if you can receive it, if you are mystically, spiritually stable enough to understand this. But if you are one who is plugged into the Methodists, the Baptists, the Catholics, and all of these other people, you can't deal with it. You can't receive it. because they've told you don't believe in reincarnation. So Jesus has to address them and say, only those people who can receive it, okay, only those people who can receive that will understand and will be able to take it. Okay. Now what about this? So you can say, no, what you can say to me, wait a minute, ho, 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 ho. What he was talking about was saying, you got this screwed up. What he was talking about, he was saying that John the Baptist fulfilled, the spirit of Elijah. He wasn't saying that's really Elijah. He was saying that, John the Baptist is a guy that fulfills the prophecy of a guy that like Elijah was going to come, So, in other words, if you look at John the Baptist, you can say there's the spirit of Elijah. That's all he meant by that. Okay. So that's a good counter to that particular idea of Elijah being John the Baptist. Page 18 in the New Testament. Okay. Matthew 17. Page 18 in the New Testament, Matthew 17. Now go to verse 11. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias or Elijah truly, I want you to look at that word, truly shall first come and restore all things. Not just symbolically, he said he will truly come. But I say unto you, verse 12, that Elijah is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. Truly he shall come. And what is he saying? The Son of Man shall come in the same way. What did he say? He said that Elijah came reincarnated as John the Baptist, and nobody recognized that John the Baptist had actually that which is the spirit and personality of Elijah inside. And he says it would happen in the same way to the Christ. Why? Because the Christ is in you, you are one with the Christ, and none of them out there recognize it. None of them out there recognize it. And they say you're nothing but a worthless sinner because they don't know that you're the Christ. Because you and Christ are one. And Christ reincarnates in human beings. He was trying to say he would reincarnate in human beings in the same way that John the Baptist was reincarnated by Elijah. All right? Now you say, well, now wait a minute. Okay, that's two. That kind of balances the other one. It does look like maybe there was this question of reincarnation here. Maybe there was some reincarnation going on here. Because Jesus said he would truly come. Did anybody else besides Jesus feel that there was something about John the Baptist that portrayed another life or another entity that had come into him? Let's take a look. Let's go back to page 14, to Matthew 14 in your New Testament. Matthew 14. And I want to show you a very strange statement made by King Herod. Okay, King Herod made a very strange statement. If you're not able to, are you guys able to see all right, or do you need some light there? Are you sure? Because we can turn those center lights on if it'd make it easy for you to read. Okay. Matthew, does everybody see? Can you read all right where you're at there? Okay. Matthew 14, verse 2. Now this is Herod, the patriarch, heard of the fame of Jesus, and said unto his servants. Now watch this one very carefully. This is John the Baptist. Watch this next line. He is risen from the dead. You see that? Did you ever see a story anywhere in the Bible that said John the Baptist was risen from the dead? Where did he get that from? So he knew that there was something about John the Baptist being fulfilled in reincarnation of someone who had physically died and reincarnated in his body and has actually risen from the dead and been in there, taken place into the ego and body of John the Baptist. It sounds like reincarnation to me. It does sound like reincarnation. But that's maybe one that you could consider as the jury, the possibility of reincarnation being alluded to in the Bible. It doesn't prove it, but I think that it is there that there's a possibility. Jesus said he would truly come. Jesus said John the Baptist was the reincarnation. And King Herod said, this is the man that was risen from the dead. Let's go. I want to show you something else very interesting. Now watch this one as we go to page 17 in your New Testament. Matthew 16 for the rest of you. Just a couple of pages up from where you were. Matthew 16. Now watch this one, and this is really interesting. Matthew chapter 16, let's go to verse 13. Okay, Jesus comes into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, and he asks his disciples, and this is the question, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? Now watch their response. They said, some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah. Others say you're Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Isn't it interesting to you that the people were commenting in this community that Jesus Christ was a reincarnation of somebody who had previously died? Do you see what happened here? In other words, the people believed that Jesus Christ had reincarnated and he was actually one of these great prophets or one of the others who had died previously. So the question then was risen, and Peter shot back with the fact that people believed that Jesus Christ was the reincarnation of somebody else. He was the reincarnation of John the Baptist, or he was the reincarnation of Elijah, or he was the reincarnation of Jeremiah, or he was the reincarnation of one of the prophets. And interesting, Jesus doesn't go into a tirade. What would you do? Especially in your born-again walk. What are you talking about? I'm a reincarnation. You don't believe in that screwy stuff, do you? He never said that. He said, well, wait a minute. You know, that's what they say. But then he said, who do you say? Okay, they say I'm these people who had died. But who do you say I'm? He didn't get all freaked out about that. He didn't say you should never talk that way. Don't read those books. Don't go down to that place. Where you been hanging out in that Vito cellar, listening to all that stuff? No, he never said anything of the kind. He said, who do you say I am? He didn't make any issue of it, other than to say that he had risen above that. He had risen above that which was flesh and blood, and that he now was an incarnation of the Christ, exactly what he wants you to be. Well, that's an interesting thing. And then you say, well, you know, he's the Christ. I mean, I can't be that. I mean, here I am in Forked River. How could I possibly fit into that kind of a mold? And I'm going to be an incarnation of the Christ. He's going to reincarnate in me. And look at page 176 in your New Testament. Go to the book of Galatians, if you would, all right? The book of Galatians, Galatians chapter 2. So we're showing you some evidences here. First of all, that Jesus Christ said John the Baptist was the reincarnation of Elijah. Second of all, that King Herod believed that somebody had reincarnated in the body of John the Baptist, which had raised him from the dead. And now we see a conversation between Jesus and his disciples, in which the disciples say that the general consensus in the town was that Jesus was a reincarnation of one of the other prophets. And here in Galatians 2:20, then, it talks about the Christ consciousness. Verse 20, I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Now watch this next one. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And so Paul then is saying that, yes, he is alive, but physically he's alive. But that which is his capacity of mind is the Christ mind. So Paul is saying it's not him that's alive, it's the Christ that's in him. And this is what we're driving at. This is what we're here for. This is what we're here to meditate for. Not to float above the chair somewhere, but to take that which is the mind of Christ and have the mind of Christ alive in us. There's a very interesting thing that happens here. Let's go to page, I don't have it in the page, I don't know, John chapter 9. Maybe somebody can call out what page that's on in the Bible. The book of John, chapter 9. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, chapter 9. If somebody could just say what page that's on. 98. All right, 98. Now here's a very interesting thing. Chapter 9, John chapter 9, verse 1. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. Did you hear that? Now watch out for that one. This man, when he was born from his mother's womb, was born blind. That's what it means. He was blind from birth. See? Now watch the question. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? How could a sin have occurred that this man committed that caused him to be born blind, unless we're talking about what? Reincarnation and karma. There are two things covered right there. Karma, he was born blind, and reincarnation, his sin in a previous life caused this blindness to occur at his birth. Do you see that? Now, wait a minute. I'm not talking about, like we said, New Age bookstore people. These are the disciples of Jesus Christ. These are the guys that Jesus Christ is teaching, and they are asking questions. Hey, well then, you know, you're the teacher here. Now tell us, this guy's born blind. Did he sin to cause this to be born? Could Jesus have been teaching them about karma? Oh my God, like Buddha? Huh? Where did he get that? Where did they get that from? Do you see it in the Bible? Do you understand the question being asked there? Do you see it in black and white or whatever it is in front of you in this holy word? Do you see it? And do you see specifically that it says the man was born blind and that the disciples, those who disciplined themselves to the teachings of Jesus Christ, were asking Jesus, did this man commit a sin before he was reborn that caused him to be blind? In other words, is this a karmic situation that occurred here? Do you see that? I wish somebody would just say no or yes. Do you see it? Yes. Okay. Because you stare sometimes. That's what I usually do. And when I stare, I don't know what you're talking about. So when they stare back at me, then I say, oh, man. You know why I wanted you to see it? It's so important that you see it. It's in the doggone Bible. So when these people come and shove a Bible under your face and say, don't believe that reincarnation stuff, stick it back to them. Say, here, read it, dumbcuff. These guys were the disciples of Jesus Christ. Stupid. These are the disciples of Jesus Christ. He was teaching them this stuff. Where did they learn this stuff from? All right? Yes. Yes. Okay. But that's a very good thing because you have two things that happen right smack there. You talk about New Age teaching. Right in that little John 9 and 1 and 2, you have reincarnation and you have karma. Bang, right there. Double-edged sword. Hold on a minute. We have a question from Father Don. Want to come up here and ask the question?
Take it a little further on verse 4. If you look at, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. If you interpret that as day, as while you're alive, then it says the night cometh when no man can work. If you follow up right to the previous verse.
I didn't get there yet.
Oh, you're going to follow up with that? Am I ahead of you?
Well, I don't have to do it now because you people are so skilled in this stuff that you are forming your own church, aren't you? You and Mary Jengard. I knew what's going on. You ain't kidding me at all. You're right. No, you're right.
There's one requirement of Mary. Never mind. Goodbye.
I don't know what that is. Okay. Okay. Jesus turns around to answer here. Does he say, wait a minute, how can a man sin before he's born? He doesn't ask that question. He doesn't say it's impossible. He doesn't say it's nonsense. What does he say? Jesus says, neither has this man sinned. Now just think for a minute. He's answering the question. And he's saying, no, this is not a karmic situation in this case. It was not something this man did in a previous lifetime that caused him. He didn't say there is no such thing as reincarnation. He didn't say there's no such thing as karma. He simply answered it. And in this situation, he says, no, that wasn't it. He says, neither this man sinned. Will you please just study it for a second and see what Jesus is answering? Jesus is not saying it's impossible to sin before you're born. He's saying, no, it wasn't this man's sin that caused it. He's answering it agreeably that, yes, it could have been, but it wasn't this particular case. This man did not sin. Just the fact that he answered that question and said, no, it wasn't this man's sin, he was agreeing that it was possible to sin before you're born. Uh-huh. Yes. Yes. Well, I want to roll. I got 2 yeses. He acknowledges that this man could have sinned, but he says that was not what caused this. This is a mystical passage, and it deals with previous existences of sinning before birth. Okay. Now, Don went ahead and told you the great mystery that he unfolded here, and it was good, and he's absolutely right on. And I don't mean to make light of it because it's very important that you do see those things. And he did say, talking about that which is day, because no man can work when it's dark, which means that when you're dwelling in the carnal mind, you cannot do these works. You can't understand them. And that's where Don was coming from, and he was absolutely right. I want to go a little bit beyond that. Okay? In John 9, verse 6, when he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground. Do you see that? You're looking at mysticism here. Okay? Let me show you something. First of all, to spit in the East is a symbol of contempt. Okay? Come on with me, because people will just say he spat on the ground in order to make mud and put it on a guy's eyes. He didn't have to go through this kind of stuff. If he wanted to go and just say, hey, you're healed, you're healed. He didn't have to go. Why did he spit on the ground? Because spitting is contempt. Okay? The ground comes out of the word Adam, which is earth, which is the symbol of the carnal mind. Okay? What Jesus did was make a statement. What has made this man blind from birth is the carnal mind, and God spits upon it in contempt. That's God's enemy. Okay. So he spits upon that which is the earth. Then what does he do? He made clay of the spittle. He took this earth, he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. In other words, he is taking this. These are the fears and the hurts and the guilt of the lower mind upon which I have spit with contempt. He places them over the man's eyes. He said, this is what has caused you to be blind. This is why you can't see. This is why you're not enlightened. This is why you're not aware of who you really are. This is why you're not aware of your kingship, of your sonship, of your Christ consciousness. Because of that which is the lower mind. And so he takes this, he puts this on the man's eyes, and he says in verse 7, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which by interpretation sent. In other words, he sends them to the pool of Siloam, and he went there into that which is the place of peace, submerges himself into that which is God's truth. What happens then? That clay, or that which is the lower mind, falls from his eyes, and he can see. It's a form of spiritual baptism. So what Jesus does then in this mystical act is, in contempt, he spits upon that which is the lower ground, or the lower mind, that which we call the devil. He takes that, puts it on the man's eyes as a demonstration to say, this is what causes blindness. This is why all of us have been blind to the truth. Now go to Siloam, into that which is God's peace, into that which is the truth of God's water, and it will wash away all of that fear from the lower mind, that lower earth, and you'll see. And you'll be made well. And so this is what Jesus meant when he said in verse 3, neither had this man sinned nor his parents, but the works of God should be made manifest in him. But here he never said to his disciples, don't be ridiculous, a man can't sin before he was born. He went and he made a mystical demonstration, but he said to them, no, in this particular case, this man is given so that we can see a demonstration of where this comes from. And here is the demonstration. Don't even worry as to whether this even ever happened. It's irrelevant. The point is it happens. Because each one of us sitting in this room were born blind from birth. And we were born blind from birth to show the glory of God by allowing that which is the mud encased on our eyes, which is the lower mind, to be washed away in the pool of peace of meditation. And then you could say, I can see. I am aware, I am enlightened, I understand. And believe me, some of you sitting here may not think you can, but you can sit down and you start talking with one of those out there who is of a main line, and you'll blow them right off their chair, and they'll say, you're crazy. That means you can see. That means you can see. Because you can't show light to a blind man. Remember that. And another thing a blind man can never see, he never can see how good you look. All right? Yes. There is something in here that's really interesting, too. Because what this shows is that this person, you could take it to a person who might have a problem, a physical problem, or some mental problem. And he is showing here us something. Let's not be glib about the misfortunes of another person. Because that was part of the born-again problem that I went through, and it soured me. Oh, that person doesn't have enough faith. that person, is into wrong thinking. That's why they're like that. Jesus Christ just said, don't listen to that stuff. Don't listen to it at all. Don't come against somebody else's misfortunes with a lot of stuff about, how you have compassion and understanding and know that we've all been born blind. This may be a new step for that person to a much higher realm that we know nothing about. That's what happened here. This fellow was touched by Christ himself, set free, lifted up far above and beyond anything that anyone ever had experienced. And you don't have to take it in the physical realm because so have you been. I don't think half the time that you really understand the things that you know. And I don't even know when I could tell you the things that I know that you could listen to it. For another time. Some person may be working at karma. You don't know. Another may be taking a test. You just do not know. Once a person steps beyond and into the higher realms of the creative presence, you've got to be very careful when you look at another person. You look at a disability of some kind, say, oh, if you had faith and all that stuff. You don't know what you're looking at. You don't know what you're talking about. And that's what Jesus was trying to tell us. And many, because of Christianity, think, oh, well, you only live once, you have a good time. But that's not what Jesus says. And I'll tell you something, and this is what I honestly believe. It may well be that the loss of reincarnation belief is a cause and effect that's related to the greatest single reason for the loss of hope and love and this feeling of materialism in the West. Because it's just eat, drink, and be merry, and the hell with it. Because I'll tell you something, these people going to church, you know why they're going to church? Just in case there happens to be something, because they really don't believe there is anything. They're showing up just in case. Because they'll sit there and they'll listen and they don't believe a word of it, but they're doing the best they can. And if something does happen, at least they can go up and say, hey, I went to church. What do you want from me? I don't know. I showed up. Nobody said anything. I don't know whether I believe anything. I mean, they sang a song. I sang the songs. What? I took up the offering. I don't know what the heck's going on. Maybe there's something there. And yet, if you went in a costume with any of this stuff, they'll slash it down because, hey, this is their traditional beliefs. They'll defend it. And that's more the subject of war and fighting and all of that business. We're just about done. I'm going to name you some people who were reincarnationists, who believed strongly in reincarnation, who taught reincarnation. And a few of the names, for those of you who come out of the church, the grand old church, as I did, will understand and love some of these names. Let me name some of them. Let me name the first two. St. Augustine, reincarnationist, believed in reincarnation, taught reincarnation. Tell you another one. St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi. Let me give you a list of some other people who taught reincarnation. Cicero, Plato, Pythagoras, the writer Ibsen, Henrik Ibsen, Goethe, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman. What was Henry Longfellow? Was that his name? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Tennyson. Tennyson, anyone? Tennyson. Robert Browning and Rudyard Kipling. All of these people. And there's something else that we talked about. You say, if I lived before, why don't I remember? Why don't I remember anything of my previous existence? The great masters will teach you that you do, and your character is your memory because you are what you were. And you will be what you are. You are what you were, and you will be what you are. Buddha used to say, if you want to see what your previous life was like, take a look at what your life is like now. And if you want to see what it's going to be in the future, take a look at what it's like now. And that's why the change. That's why entering into meditation and attacking that and breaking that karmic chain and lifting yourself into higher realms is so important. It doesn't mean that you have to be forever the way you were or the way you are, because when you introduce yourself into that realm which we call the Holy Spirit, the light, that which is nirvana, that which is the kingdom of God, all bets are off. You can rise above the power and the influence of the stars. You can rise above all of that influence and reach up into higher realms and then set your spirit free. And there's a good biblical portion of that. I want you to go, as we wrap this up, to page 98 in the New Testament, to the book of John. John chapter 8, okay? The book of John, page 98 in the New Testament. John chapter 8 and verse 51. Now this is interesting. What does Jesus say here? Verily, verily, which means I'm telling you that this is on the level. Take this to the bank. I say unto you, if a man keeps my saying, he shall never see death. And that means if you do what he says. It doesn't mean if you say you believe in him. It doesn't mean if you accept him as your Savior. It doesn't mean if you sign the card or sing it. It says if you keep my saying, means if you do what I tell you to do and seek within yourself, you'll find that which is the key to life, and you will never see death. Because there is an ultimate that breaks the continuing cycles of life and reincarnation. It's above words. It's above thought. There is a time when one needs not be born and go out from the womb to do it again. Watch on page 228 of your New Testament, Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3. Interestingly, it talks about these things in the Bible, but most people have a difficult time, especially in Christian circles, ever touching this, especially in Revelation. Revelation chapter 3, and let's go to verse 12. Him that overcomes, that's obvious, raising yourself above that which is the lower mind, will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and watch this next one now, and he shall go no more out. You see that? He shall go no more out. And I'm not going to go into the rest of it because then I'll start in the book of Revelation again. I got 50,000 tapes on that, and they'll explain that. But that, I wanted you to see that. And I honestly believe, now, of course, all of this stuff, I can't prove a word of any of it. Could be some of it wrong, but that's not the point here. The point is that you are open yourself to the Bible, you open yourself to the proofs, you open yourself to Jesus Christ and his teachings, and you open yourself to think and have hope. See? Remember we said this morning where we say where there's life, there's hope, but what Buddha said is where there's hope, there's life. So that you have life and you have it eternally and abundantly. To me, one of the greatest treasures that I've received here is knowing that this magnificent blue marble in the middle of the universe that God has created, well, there we lost the sound for a minute. Okay, this Garden of Eden is going to be restored. This big blue marble one day will be paradise. One day will be heaven. So what do you say? Oh, well, what happens then? If I go no more out, I can't come back anymore. I honestly believe that once you reach that stage, you come back like the Elijahs. You come back to lead and heal. But you don't have to come back to seek and find and knock and ask and fakakta. What am I doing here? You come back to lead and heal and set right and replant the beautiful garden and make this beautiful, magnificent sphere in the middle of the universe God's ordaining, his jewel in the crown of the universe. I love it. I just am so excited about coming back. Aren't you? Are you all going to come back and assemble here in Gordon's basement? Or what? Not Gordon's basement. I thought Gordon's. Vito's. Hey, did you hear that? But we used to have church in Gordon's restaurant. You know? What I get? I got one more scripture. One more scripture, and it takes 2 seconds. If some of you are stirring in your seats, they're getting restless. Joan is yawning. They're getting restless. Leave it closed. Don't zip it again. Every time, I don't know whether it's her fly or her Bible or what it is now. Zip. You know, I say, my God, will you wait, woman? God, what happens here? Now, I gotta explain that. Here, I got to explain it.
Don't drop my paper.
I've got to explain it. Don't worry about your... This young lady that I'm married to, okay, as I get near the end of my soliloquies, she has a habit of going. So that's why I said that, because
Works.
it does. Okay, wait a minute now. It says, he that overcomes, he shall go no more out. Right? We just read that? Okay. But until that overcoming, until that precious time, how can one accomplish and reach this ultimate bliss of nirvana, the kingdom of God? Let's go to the final scripture and the end of the night message to page 90. The rest of you go to John chapter 3. John chapter 3. John chapter 3. Oh, keep quiet down there. John chapter 3. And verse, are you ready with me? I want you to see it. Are you all going to read it to me? Are you going to read it again together? One of us, each one. What the heck is he saying? You're going to read it with me. Here we go, John chapter 3, verse 7. Jesus Christ says, marvel not that I said unto you, you must be born again. Huh? Pretty good stuff. We did pretty good today. Not bad. And I'll tell you something. If I got my choice of being born again and coming back here and doing this again, I'll take it. Because the other way is either, you're going to fly up on a cloud and get a harp, or you're going to go into a fire. I don't want nothing to do with that. I don't want harps. I don't like that. I don't like wings for cocked on my back. I don't like anything crowning me in. I want to come back here and just go through this and have a good time. I'm liable to be, huh? What is it? Be another little Billy. But we got a lot to do here. And so everybody just get themselves together. Right. Come here. You can't do this on the television.
When you think of within a family unit, how everybody is children, you can have 3 or 4 children in a family, and you're ripping my mic, and they can all be so different, and you wonder, and some of them maybe get into some trouble, and the other one is a real good kid, and the parents wonder, where did they go wrong? A lot of times, maybe they didn't go wrong. Maybe the child came into this life with that karma to work out. And it accounts for, the individualisms within the family.
That's why.
And just another thing, that
go ahead, Mother.
Within a family, there can be so many chemically addicted, and they have never been able to genetically prove chemical addictions, right, Albert? They have tried and tried and tried, and they have almost come on, this is a solution, and this is why, and with genetics, and they have never been able to. But from all the reading that I do, you always have to work out your chemical addictions or any addictions on this side of the veil. So you choose that family to come into to work out that addiction. Yeah. That's what I think. I've run that by a lot of people that are chemically addicted, and they just sort of look at me like,
Well, I was just going to say about like what Rose and Joe are going to do on here on Saturday nights to give young people a chance to talk it out and to sit around and talk about it. And you get into some really interesting things because I don't want to carry on because I know you're anxious to go, but I just want to show you that we were talking about this at lunch today when I was up at this managers conference for our company, which was presided over by this psychologist. He had you do this, what they call Briggs-Stratton test. And it's a psychological test in which you answer just a bunch of, questions that don't mean a whole lot. You put circles around them, And then he added up the scores, and when he came back, he stood in front of the group in the class, and he looked over at me because I was the only one that got this particularly unique score. Nobody else did, And he said to me, "You're a mystic." And he says, "You don't make decisions quickly. You ponder." And it's actually true. And, you look at your personality there. And I came out, my score was an INFP. Okay? That INFP labels me. That's the kind of recipe that was used when I was made. And there's nothing that can change that. Absolutely nothing. When I am aware of it, I can then use that to be more considerate of another person. But now other people who are in my business who are aware that I'm that will not demand me to make instant decisions because I'm not capable of doing it. I can't operate that way because that's the way an INFP. Now, I am an INFP, which means mystic inside and introvert inwardly. Joan took the test and she is an INFT, something like that, which she has the mystical qualities and inward, but she displays them on the outward side. So I can teach this stuff, but I can't put it into practice. She may not be able to teach it like I can, but she can put it into practice. And so that's the difference. You see? And if someday when Joan gets this put together, we're going to have a get-together one night and everybody take the test. It's very simple, but you'll get the number and you'll know exactly what you are. And then when you see another person that sometimes gets on your nerves or whatever, you'll understand why. It's not that that person's doing anything deliberately. The person can't help it. That's just the way they are. And you can adapt yourself then to that person's... Yeah, but that it's really great because, let me give an example. Here I'm an INFP, which means I cannot make a decision. I have to think. And I like other people surround me with ideas, But I was the other day where I went to the hospital to visit Mark and this fellow with AIDS. And I came back and I had my, I get into my little shorts, to go around the house. It's hot. So I'm standing there with these pants in my hand and the shirt, and I said to Joan, should I wear these later, or should I put them over in the washing machine? She said, whatever you want to do. So I stood there with my pants in my hand, standing there staring at the wall. I didn't know what I wanted, and I didn't know what to do. And that's exactly the way I am. And then she said the magic, will you shut up? She said the magic word.
No. So I looked at him and I started just standing there. So I just turned around and just continued doing the dishes. I thought, I'll just let him be this way for a few minutes. And then I turned around and he said, should I wear them later or put them in the washer? I thought I better pull them out of this one, you know. So I said, put them in the washer.
So I did. But you know, the interesting part is many times when Joan will talk to me across the dinner table, and I stare. And in the earlier days of our experience, she got scared, you know, because where did he go, or, you know, are you alive? Now she just understands. That's the way it is. And so that she can be understanding of me. In fact, my boss who attended the seminar told me that I used to freak her out because she called up everybody else and said, what should we do about this? What are you going to do about this? And they'd say, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. She'd call me up and say, what are you going to do about this? Oh, I don't know. I don't know, because I cannot do that. But I will call her back the next day or an hour or two, and I'll tell her what I'm going to do about it. But see, what she did, she came to me then, and she told me then she understands. And so she doesn't require me to make a decision like that anymore, and she can get along with me much better than she did. So as you understand in other words, when Mary understands what Ron is, and Ron understands what Mary is, then they can understand why they cannot maybe do some things exactly the way the other person says. Same with Dave and Debbie, I'm sorry. And the same with Al and Claire, or Ethel and Al, anybody. When you are finally, you reach a point where you can understand how the other person works, then you start to move your approach to that other person to accommodate their ways. And everything starts to get a lot smoother. Because if you try to get them to accommodate your way, and they're not capable of doing that because of whatever they are, an INFP. See, in other words, an INFP and an EOWTF, they're not going to make it. There's going to be all hell breaking loose in there until they understand, I am that way and you're this way. So now let's try to accommodate that difference in each of us and try to get on a plan. And then it works. Then it works. As I said this morning, okay, a collie cannot become a German Shepherd. And a German Shepherd cannot become a collie. They just can't. And so you have to accommodate those two types of personalities. So when we were the veterinarians that time, the veterinarian said, when I operate on a German Shepherd, I don't worry about him. But when I operate on a collie, I worry because they have a tendency to get very melancholy, maybe then get off and scared into a corner and just die. Just die. So I have to be careful, so I have to accommodate myself to the personality of the collie, and I don't have to pay too much attention to the German Shepherd. And that's not unlike people. We have to accommodate ourselves because each one of us has a unique stamp in here, and we're different. And when the other person recognizes what stamp, and Joan recognizes I am an INFP, other people do, they understand they have to accommodate that because I cannot be anything else. That's the way I am. And I think it'll be very interesting, and I hope one day that you're able to do that for these people.
Well, Billy, what you're really saying is that we have to understand that we don't think like everybody else,
right.
Okay? And when we're brought up, we think that we're the only ones that think this way. I mean, that everybody thinks the way we think. And then as we are exposed to other people, we realize that, hey, no, it's individualistic thinking, and that there's a whole other world out there. But if we're never exposed to that, then it's always like, if this is the way I solve problems, everybody has to solve them the same way, and it's not true.
Okay.
And John Bradshaw brings this out a lot, too, in his series on the dysfunctional family. Yeah, so this is really, it's a good test. It's a really good test. And we hope that we can work it out, that everybody can take it.
It works, too. Mm-hmm. It'll define who you are, bang, just like that. And it's just the way it is.
Nobody could hear you.
No, well, that's all right, too. Well, anyhow, that's interesting. Okay. All right, ladies, we're going to we're on television. We're going to say, Bradshaw. All right, we got to say goodnight, Gracie, and we're going to say goodnight. Okay. You know what I wanted to do?